Hey, welcome into the Road to Black podcast, episode 49. And we're here with myself and Wes are here with our pal from Ari's East Mesa, Alex Martinez. What's up, Alex?
How you guys doing?
Doing
Good,
well,
man.
doing well. It's been a long time coming. Getting on
thanks.
this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. What'd you guys do today? Did you guys get any training in?
Got a morning class done, and mostly it's been trying to catch up on a lot of things. There's never nothing to do at the academy, you know?
Yeah.
Deborah, Chris, myself, and Amy are constantly either communicating with students, sending out emails, sending out text messages, trying to wrangle people who have been missing for a couple weeks, all that fun stuff.
Yep. Being a business owner. It's
Being a business owner.
Yeah.
running a business, trying to train, running a jiu-jitsu business. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. But having an academy, there's just, Wes and I have talked about this as non-academy owners for many times on the podcast, but just, we always say, like, pay respects to the academy owner or the black belt of your gym, because it's one thing to know jiu-jitsu and to be able to teach it, but it's so much more to be able to go out there and run a business a successful business as the academy itself. Mm-hmm. So I know you've been talking to me about this, Alex, for since you opened the place, and it's been cool to see you guys go through your, I guess, a little bit of growing pains at first, but you're doing really well, and you guys, it seems like you have a close-knit family, and I'm friends with people that train there. And tell us a little bit about your history. Alex is here from the Valley here in Arizona, where I'm at. For our listeners, Wes was also here in Arizona for many years, training with me at our academy, GD Jiu-Jitsu. He's in Colorado now. If you listen to the podcast, you definitely know that. So we got Wes is in Colorado, and Alex, we're all just kind of remoted in. If you're not watching this, you can check this out on YouTube if you want to. Otherwise, what I was getting at is, Alex, just tell everybody a little bit that might not know you. Tell them a little bit about your history. Really just get into what got you into jiu-jitsu. And because I know you've had some pretty significant transformations in your health. Probably health-wise is a big one, right, for you in jiu-jitsu. So, but just growth, everything growth. I mean, becoming a black belt, which you are, you've been doing this for a while. You compete a lot. So, tell us how you got started, where you got started, and what eventually led you open your own gym.
Yeah. So, I was doing triathlon for a while, and I got a little spooked. Had a lot of really close calls with cars. And that kind of got me off the bike. And you know what happens when you quit doing something you've basically been doing for a while is you just start gaining weight, and getting fat's a lot of fun, man. I got to admit. But I got pretty heavy, and I was 40 years old, and going up a flight of steps, I had to stop and actually hold on to a rail, because I thought something really bad was happening. My heart was pounding. I was just in really bad shape, and at the time, my wife was going through nursing school with a guy that would not shut up about jiu-jitsu. That's all he talked about. And we would go to dinner with this guy, and I'm sitting there rolling my eyes. Oh no. But when that happened, it actually prompted me to just Google jiu-jitsu in Mesa. And I found Paul Nava's Academy, and I've been going there. I started going there, and I fell in love with it right away. At the time, Paul had a little trial period. I think it was like a week long or whatever. 2 days in, I knew I was in, and I told him, I was like, I'm down. Let's sign up. And at first, it was just mostly to get myself in shape, right? I just wanted to lose the weight, get back into fighting shape, and just be one of the guys in the academy. But there's something that happens when you kind of immerse yourself in that culture, so to speak. Is people really embrace you. Like the guys that are really down, like really into it, they embrace you as one of their own, and you just start getting really involved, and all of a sudden you're showing up to competition classes to help them get ready, right? Because you're not competing, right? And next thing you know, you sign up for a tournament, and I've been traveled the country with Paul. We've gone to Atlanta, Florida, New York, California, Nevada, Texas, you name it.
Yeah.
And I really, been competing since a white belt and never stopped.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long ago was that when this started, when you got into it?
I got into jiu-jitsu in 2013, so about 9 years ago. And it was, I was just, coming off a business trip, and, I saw Nava's light was on as I was, driving by to kind of check it out. And I stopped in. It might have been like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I didn't know it, but they were getting ready for pans. So when I walked in, there's all these guys like murdering each other, it was chaos. And I thought, man, if this doesn't kill me, I'm going to get in pretty good shape. So I jumped in.
Beautiful. So you basically, you competed the whole time. You fell in love with it quickly, like many of us do. Most of our listeners obviously are training jiu-jitsu, so they can pretty much relate to that. At what point did you know you wanted to open your own place? Because that had to have been, I think it's a decision a lot of guys think about, especially if you're looking to have a career and maybe you're younger and this might be exactly what you want to do. But I know you personally, you have a real job per se, or a job prior to being a jiu-jitsu academy owner. So I know that's a huge leap, and I know you're kind of still in transition with that. Talk a little bit about that, because we have a lot of guys, gals that might be in the same boat, but also a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to us. So, what made you decide, or let's say, how did it all come about to get your team together to go through this venture?
Well, it kind of started as a joke. I had my blue belt, and I got an opportunity to assist with coaching. I was just kind of the uki that always showed up, right? So I was kind of helping, and I got a little bit more involved as I went. But I was, my wife Amy was asking, like, how involved are you going to get with this thing? And I said, it's not like we're going to open our own academy one day, so don't worry about it. So that's the joke we always tell each other. But about early 2019, maybe late 2018, I started talking with my partner Chris. And we were playing with different ideas. Maybe we should, invest in a school and try to help them grow, because we were getting more involved with the ownership side of the heads of areas. Like all the owners kind of, I don't know, they kind of embraced us, and we would go to their meetings and stuff like that. Really got to know them and really liked what we were seeing. Like, they were very successful guys and, very business savvy. I mean, yeah, they throw on gis and they put on reggae music and they do all this stuff, but they're very successful, very smart business people. And man, I just got very drawn to that. So, it was early 2000. I was sitting in traffic on my way to my day job, and I'm just sitting there like, man, why am I doing this? Why am I going? It's one of those moments where I just sat there and I'm like, I've been basically teaching for a few years now, and I love it, and I see these guys being successful. Man, what if, right? What if I could pull this off? So right away I got on the phone, I called Chris, and I said, hey man, I want to partner up with you. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can open up our own spot. So we did. We formed our S Corp, and we started playing around with different ideas, websites and, just the little things. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just kind of winging it, and asking a lot of questions and making a lot of phone calls. And it was an amazing process, because like those same guys that, that we looked up to were, making time and getting on Zoom calls and getting on phone calls and telling us how to get it done. And
that's amazing.
It was so cool. Like, you almost feel like you have that supportive environment, just like you do when you walk into a jiu-jitsu academy. You have that support under you that's going to say, you walk up to somebody and go, hey, how do I do an arm bar? Oh man, come on over. They could be drenched in sweat, tired after class, and they'll sit there and they'll work with you for as long as they can until the guy sweeping wants to get them out of the way, right? So, same exact principle, man. These guys really embraced this. So, COVID hit, and our other business partner, Chris's wife, unfortunately she lost her job because she was in the hospitality business, and that industry took a dive, and So we sat down as a group and we said, so what are we going to do? Are we going to, put it on hold? I totally understand. And, they said, hey, we're all in. So we launched. We didn't know what we were doing, man. We launched, right? So the real critical piece that I can stress is we got in with a group. I guess I should say we wanted to model whoever was the most successful group out there. And a few months before we launched, we met this guy named Lance Triplett. He's a guy out of Maryland, and he runs a business called Academy Kings. And we called Lance, and he basically taught us. We signed up with this program. It's MMA Studio Secrets or Academy Kings, and they taught us how to market, how to get people in the door and sell, how to deliver the product, and how to write. Or they had curriculums written. They had all this stuff. All of these things that we needed to get started were already built. We just had to learn it. And we're still with them today. I mean, it's a year commitment with them, but I can't see us moving forward without them. They have so many great ideas. Wow. They bring, and they have they have this small network of people that's, again, they're just eager to help. They're eager to share their knowledge. And if you're going through a change in your business, let's just say you're going to hire your first coach, man. You're like 8 months in, and hey, I need it, and they're giving us ideas on like what types of insurance to buy, and how to bring them on board properly, and how to maintain that relationship, and what does the average coach make? I don't know, right? So They helped us out with that, and they continue to come up with just these innovative ideas on how to get people through the door and how to keep them, how to love on them.
That sounds like an amazing resource.
It is. Yeah. It's.
I need that for my businesses.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can be the guy that starts it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Lance had we do everything remote, obviously, because there's business owners from across the country, and it could be a guy that's borrowing mat space in a karate school that's doing jiu-jitsu twice a week, and there's also people like there's a couple in Alpha BJJ in I think they're out of Idaho, and they are they're a 7-figure business.
Wow.
And they owe a lot of that. They say they owe a lot of that to the Academy Kings, and the growth in our business has been, it's been insane. The growth has been insane, and I can tell you, we probably couldn't have gotten it done without them.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you find that place?
So one of the heads of Aries is Samir Chantre, and he was actually their first client. And so Samir would travel the world to compete and do all these things because that's what you do as a young competitor. He's been competing at that level for I don't know, like 12, 13 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing that, something's not gonna be as good as you want it to be. The business is gonna struggle a little bit. And once he got on board with the Academy Kings, he said this is how he sold it to me. He said, they changed my life. They turned everything around for me. And I was like, okay, I'm in. I mean, I respect Samir. I've known him for a while. I trust him. And he was the one that introduced us to Lance and got us on board.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't wait to see. It's nice to have a resource that you just continue. I mean, they probably know their value at this point, and I'm sure they have a model that you can continue using them month after month. I mean, that is such a great resource for a small business to have. Just period.
Yeah, and we get on calls every week, and they go a step beyond that. So the calls every week are just basically open to all of the Academy Kings members, and then you can sign up for a roundtable group. It's another group that meets. It's about once a month, but that's a group that you're in a group of your peers. And you're sharing your numbers, and you're talking about why your revenue isn't where it should be, or why your cost per student is too low, and all this other stuff. But they're doing that in such a way that you're almost like it's almost like having a sales manager, right? That you have to account to, right? You have to that holds you to your feet to the fire. So every month when we're working our numbers, I'm thinking about that call with Lance. That man, I don't want to be the one. I don't want to be the one that gets called out because we give him our numbers every month. So and he helps us a lot with that. Mm-hmm.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of whether it's business or jiu-jitsu, I mean, that accountability piece is huge, right? I mean, it business, jiu-jitsu, I mean, you don't get the results that you want on the mat, so you don't get results that you want in business. That accountability piece allows people to really drive forward, and I firmly believe that on the mats. You don't have to have like an accountability buddy per se, but having coaches that are invested in you, that are, like you were talking about earlier, that are reaching out, hey, where you been the last couple weeks? I mean, that's how you get people to their goals. And, just like this business has helped you, I mean, this business, this Academy Kings, they've changed your life, and
100%.
you're doing the same thing for your students. I mean, that rolls downhill, and that accountability piece is huge for that. So
such a good structure.
It's a great structure.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And getting back to the coaching piece, when Chris and I opened the academy, I've got a lot of friends that non-jiu-jitsu friends that have kind of been with me throughout the journey. They haven't given up on me yet, right? They still invite me to functions, but they've seen, what we're doing, and they're very encouraging, like, hey, that's great. But, I had somebody tell me, one of my friends tell me, it must be frustrating to not be able to train as much because you're an owner now. And they're right. It can be frustrating. You're tired. You've been teaching all day. All you want to do is go to sleep, right? But you get in there, you train as much as you can. But what I told him is, when I was a student, I got myself in better shape, not forget about physically, right? Mentally, I got myself where I need to be. When I was a coach, I got to see students develop. And now as a co-owner of a business, I get to watch lives change, like all around me. I get to have students come up to me and tell me, hey coach, this was the best investment I ever made in myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Try holding back the tears, man, when you talk to a person, right? And, we had a student, older gentleman, came in and said, hey coach, my feet hurt. And I said, well, you need a doctor because, I'm a jiu-jitsu coach. And, he said, no, I'm diabetic. I haven't felt my feet in years. So the pain in his feet was like a very positive thing for him. So, man, I get stories like that, all the time, and they're, I don't know, I can't put a price on that.
No, it's priceless.
Yeah.
I mean, that is so much. I mean, just making the income, that's one thing. I mean, you have to do that to survive the business, right?
Yeah.
But it's that, to have that type of business that impacts lives like that it's so gratifying. It's like it's irreplaceable. And probably when you look at I'm sure this is how I was too a little bit. I'm trying to relate, but same thing. But the job I used to do, working in the corporate world or working for SRP, which I did for many years, I didn't have like as many investments in that than I even do with ChillFit, let's say, where we have clients that have been coming in for 5 years. Yeah. So same thing. People say, hey, just doing these treatments have really helped, in many different ways. But now, it's so different. I look back on that other job, and this is not to criticize anyone with a regular job, but it's like, how rewarding is that? Like, I don't make as much money as I used to because running a business is hard, personal money. I mean, I can admit that here. I could go I can go back and work in the corporate world and make a ton of money, but it might not mean as much. It doesn't mean as much. So for me, jiu-jitsu is my passion. That would be the ultimate thing, is to do something like that. But I don't have any interest in opening an academy, but I can kind of like relate to that part, just having a business of my own that helps people. And and I think with jiu-jitsu, it helps. I can just scratch the surface of people getting some relief from a sore elbow. But when you're talking a jiu-jitsu owner, an academy, that's your family, first of all. You literally take on family members. And I know that just as a coach and a training partner of people for many years. I mean, let's face it, the people in our gym, those people become our closest friends. I mean, the people that you spend the most time with. I mean, that's what it is. And so every little thing is you probably have so many emotional impacts going forward, from people seeing success to heartbreak to So that is probably something that all of you guys and gals as academy owners, is that something you even thought about, or is that something you're realizing now at the emotional impact you're going to, you are literally going to have to face this for as long as you have that academy, the good and the bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you almost become like an emotional coach. I mean, you know this as a coach, you have to, both of you guys, both part of coaching is knowing who you're dealing with and who you're conversing with and what their emotional state is at that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's absolutely, you're absolutely right about that. You become that emotional, I don't know, just that person that they come to and they just open up to, and you know, the cool thing is you can open up to them as well, you know, and no one thinks any less of anybody there, you know, and you know, I'm obviously not going to tell them everything I'm going through, right? But if I'm going through something, man, I can sit down and have a conversation with one of my students that I know, you know, and you know, that I've known for a little bit, and just tell them, hey, man, you're not alone, man. We all go through stuff. We all have something going on. It's like, you know, I may put on this, you know, this like face when I'm coaching, like, you know, everything's cool, but you know, when I'm done coaching, I'm pretty vulnerable, you know, just like everybody else. Yeah. But you know, if I can get on the mat for a couple hours and just make my day a little bit better, that's all I need, man. That's like that perfect golf shot when you go play golf, right? I mean, all you need is one. So, but that's really it. You know, and we a lot of my students are a little bit older. You know, what I really like about our academy, we have a really good mix of different, you know, age groups as far as, you know, coaches go, and so the demographic kind of matches that. We have some young guys, you know, really tough competitors. We have some older people, but you know, when you go into a jiu-jitsu academy and you see like a, you know, 55-year-old or a 60-year-old person, man or woman doing jiu-jitsu, you're thinking, wow, they're pretty tough, because you know what it's like with your day one, week one, month one. It's hard. It's hard on the body, right?
Oh yeah.
So you know, my partner Chris and I were talking about that once, and I was just asking him, like, what if we could make that normal? Like, what if we can create an environment where people, you know, 55, 60 years old, 65 years old can come in and they can train. They can just train. We can cater to the tough competitor. We can cater to, you know, the college person trying to learn self-defense. And we can cater to people who are like, I want to try this, but I'm really scared. You know, what if we can embrace them, right?
Senior night, right?
Senior night, yeah.
Now, seriously, I'm sure that I think you would pack the house.
Yeah.
You would pack the house, because I've also, and I'll give you, I mean, just through my experience dealing with people and older people that ask me about grappling, I've had, and including my father, by the way, because when I first started getting into jiu-jitsu, back in 2012, 13, I was like obsessed, as everybody, you know, I'm just like going all the time, and he's like, you're 37, 38 years old. What are you doing? You know, and not in a bad way. He was just like, kind of like taken aback, because I didn't play sports since high school. I haven't done anything like that, or, you know, and my dad was a high school wrestler, and like went to state champion, just like a state champ in Illinois, and this back in his day. So he tried to get me in wrestling in junior high. And I did it for 1 year, freshman year. After that, I wasn't as interested in wrestling. I was like, I'm going to get a job. I want a new truck. So I had to go get a job. That was my path. I had left sports and went and started buying things. And so the point is many years later, 20 years later, I'm 37, super 38 years old, getting into jiu-jitsu, just can't stop talking about it, that whole thing. And by a year or two in, he realizes, like, I'm really serious, you know. He came to a couple of my tournaments, like my first tournament at white belt and stuff. And point is he was kind of intrigued. So he's probably in his low 60s at the time. And he's like, and I wanted him to do it because he's a former grappler. And he's in really good shape, by the way. My dad was always ripped. He was like always lifting weights, always the biggest. He was like the dad. Everyone's like, oh my God, look at Paul's dad. Like, he was that dude, bodybuilder guy. Yeah. And so growing up, he was always like that. So later in life, I'm like, you can, let's get you in there and do some jiu-jitsu. All right. I was just telling him, because actually he asked me, he was like, do you think this is something that older people do? And my whole thing was exactly what you said. I was like, you could definitely do this and you would love it, and it could totally change your life and your direction even in later in life. Not that he needs one. He's very successful, very happy man. But I said, your problem would be you have to find training partners in your class and age group.
Yep.
Because when you're that old, you are so much more limited, and you're learning just, you would learn and just grow with that core group better. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean to say he can't go to classes, but you can't really be, I mean, you don't see too many 65-year-olds in jiu-jitsu already that are starting, or whatever it was, 62. But you know what I mean? I think there's room for that if you create the environment, is my whole point. Because my point to him was, and I've talked to people at Chillfit about this, they know I wear jiu-jitsu t-shirts. They ask me about it. Is this something? I have another guy, he used to wrestle. He's probably 57. He wants to try it bad. I've been trying to talk this guy in. Every time I see him, I want to try this. And he's always intrigued, but he's just super busy business guy.
Yeah.
Point is, he can do it, you know? I mean, you can do it if you have the right training partners. You're probably not going to be into it as much if you're the only 62-year-old in a room full of younger people that are savages. Yeah. Who knows? You name the gym. I mean, every gym is so different. It's hard to like categorize them all, but the point is senior night might be very successful, my man.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I'm all about it, man. I'm all about it. And you know what I find is when you get somebody a little bit older, say in their mid 50s or whatever, you know, they are, of course, they're the older guy, they're the white belt on the mat, whatever. But once they step off the mat, you should hear that person interact with the other students. He now becomes the black belt at life. Like these guys he's almost holding court, right? You know.
Oh yeah.
People ask him all kinds of questions, and you know what? He's been around. Like
the belt doesn't matter at that point.
It doesn't. And that's a really beautiful dynamic that happens. You know, you transition from off the mat to on. The hardest thing about being an academy owner, I'll tell you this: getting people out of there. Because they just, you know, they love each other, and they only get to see each other for that hour, and after class they're just, you know, they like to be there and talk to each other, which is awesome. That's a great feel. Don't get me wrong. Everybody relax. You can hang out and talk. But I love that, and I love when, you know, the older person in the room becomes, you know, he becomes a black belt in life off the mat and helps them, you know, with their everyday stuff. So that's really cool.
That wisdom is everything. As I get older, I realize it's like, as you know too, you guys know. I mean, it doesn't matter your age. As you get older, you become more wise on many different things, and that also gets applied in other aspects of your life, including jiu-jitsu. You know, so even though he's a brand new grappler at age 60, that guy is he's savvy in life, and when he gets on the mat, he's probably going to have some skills that other people don't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know,
sure.
in terms of mind knowledge. So. The other thing is, tell me about your onboarding process, because you're talking, I like you're talking like groups of people at your gym, you know, you got the younger crowd or whatever, however you guys are categorizing them. But in terms of new people, that was one of the cooler things I've heard from you is when you're talking to me about onboarding people, which is probably a great, I've parroted this to other people and kind of praised you and your team, because I think it's a great idea, and we can all relate to that as being a new grappler, but introducing newer students as groups together, which is something I really wanted to ask you about, and I know you're open about sharing that. Tell me a little bit about that, and who came up with that, and how fast did you guys come up with that idea?
You know, honestly, that's another part of the Academy Kings piece. We learned all of that. So we just modeled what they do, and it works. So what we do is about every 3 weeks we start a new introductory period. So our introductory period goes for 6 weeks, right? So throughout the 3-week period before they start, we're doing all our sales and all of that stuff. So we set up a start date. So let's just say it's December 20th, right? December 20th is day one. We're going to have an orientation on the 18th, which is that Saturday. So we have a 1-hour orientation with those new students. So they come into the academy. We're just sitting in regular clothes. We're having a conversation. We have this PowerPoint that we barely reference. I mean, it's more of a conversation. And we just let them know what to expect on day one. Make sure you have shoes on your feet when you're off the mats. Make sure you have nothing on your feet when you're on the mats. If you show up late, this is what you do. When you come in, make sure you check in. Why is it important to check in? Well, because we have to keep track of everybody that comes and goes. And we tell them about, safety things, the importance of clipping your toe and fingernails, how to keep your gi clean, all that stuff that you learned along the way, we cram into an hour, right?
Wow.
So when that student shows up on Monday, they're not sitting there kind of giving that side look that we all did, right, when we first started. Mm-hmm. They're very confident. And here's the best part. Let's just say you have 8 people at orientation. There's 8 people that can kind of flock to each other going, oh, there you are. Hey, how's it going? And they don't feel as uncomfortable as we did when they're like, hey, here's your loaner gi, here's your belt, there's the mat. So
that part is great.
It helps a ton. It's helped a ton with our retention. We noticed that if we, early on, we're just trying to figure out how we were going to do this, and we got it nailed down. But we noticed that when we allowed people to just kind of hop in, our retention rate drops. When we bring people on board through the orientation process, through that day one process, we tend to keep. We're talking, the difference between keeping 30% and keeping 90% of your people. So, wow. It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
That's amazing. It makes so much sense too. And in a martial art where you're bringing on new people, and it's so uncomfortable for people, and I can completely relate to that. And I was just so I didn't ever go in a gym or a jiu-jitsu gym before I did jiu-jitsu, so I'm like a lot of people. You just walk in, it's like you take that leap of faith. And I never walked into a karate gym either, so I don't know how it is in there, but it's like it was crazy, just walking in and having the courage to do that, really, as a grown man, to be honest. I think just having other people there and moving through that process, obviously, is invaluable. You've said it yourself. It helps retention because people can look over their shoulder and go, "Oh, okay, this woman was in the class with me. She's right there with me still." So.
Yeah, and we started doing that from day one. So we have students that have been with us from the beginning who will point that out. They'll be like, hey, me, that person, that person, that person. We did orientation together. So they've been together since day one, literally. So that's awesome. You know how it is. I'm sure you have people that you've been together since day one.
Yeah.
And, in jiu-jitsu, we kind of wear it as a badge of honor that a lot of people quit, right? I don't want to lose any. I want 100% retention. Yeah. I want everybody to finish. I want everybody to get to that finish line, whatever their finish line is, right? If they want to go get a black belt one day, I want them to be with me for 10 years and get their black belt. If the goal is to learn self-defense and then, move to Montana or go to college, that's their finish line. I don't want to lose anybody because they got disinterested, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to lose anybody for that. So if I can get them in the door properly, or we can get them in the door properly and we can get them trained up before they step on the mat, retention goes way up.
That's great.
So when do you at all kind of tell them about the expectations as far as grading and promotions? Is that something that you incorporate into your intro, or is that kind of sprinkled into your coaching style and maybe your night speeches? How do you go about telling your students what their expectations are as they grow in the sport?
Yeah, so we make it a really good point of letting people know that you don't really achieve a promotion. You don't really how should I say it? You don't really graduate into a promotion. You grow into one. So we actually sit as a group of coaches and say, okay, we have this person, that person, that person eligible for their blue belt. Let's start, we're going to start evaluating them because the blue belt promotion is in, say, 4 months. And then we sit down at that 4-month period and we say, okay, what do you guys think? And then we'll say, this person, that person's ready. And that's how we do our promotions. As far as a student asking about promotions, we let them know the basics of jiu-jitsu promotions, right? A stripe every 6 months. You're probably going to spend 2 years in each belt. And it takes approximately 10 to 12 years to get your black belt, and they always sit back in their chairs when they hear that, right? But we just tell them, hey, jiu-jitsu is all about one day at a time. You never know what's going to happen that next row. You may be out for a month because of that next row. So don't put that 6-month stripe thing in your head. Just grow into the next belt, right? Your instructor's going to know when you're ready. Just trust your instructor.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
but you got to put that out there. You know,
Yeah,
you got to let them know what that expectation is, and that's a good solid framework.
Yeah.
Do you guys come up with your belt? I mean, obviously the 2 year per belt thing. That's how I always look at jiu-jitsu when I'm framing someone getting. You know, even if I see somebody online and. You know, everyone's so different. You can have somebody that's a blue belt for 8 years, and so, you know what I mean. It's so hard, and then there's really not a tight structure. But do you, as a coach, do you look for like skill set and time and grade, or is there just sometimes when I shouldn't say time and grade, but what if someone has a superior? They feel they're learning quickly. And they might not come to even that many classes, but they're killing it in the gym. Do you look for like a overall skill set for belt in terms of as part of it, not just time? Hey, you got to be a white. I know that's not, you know, we have to evaluate their skills, but do you encourage like a breadth of skill set, or do you determine it by the athlete? And what I mean by that is maybe you have a blue belt that's just killing it in competitions. And there's a lot of these out there, you know this, and they're kind of single focused on their skill set, and that's no knock on blue belts because you're a blue belt. You know, at blue belt we're learning. We have to continue learning all the different guards and you know all that stuff. You're going to keep learning that as you go through your higher belts. But my point is, do you coach competitors off of those paths, or do you? You know, if you know somebody that throws up the triangle every time, their whole game is getting to the triangle and they're a competitor and they're triangling all the time, do you encourage in a competition or even in training to go outside your comfort zone? Because I think, as I'm a coach, but I'm not an owner and I'm not a black belt, what I think is there's like a point of diminishing returns. I mean, I think you have to like let an athlete that's killing it and maybe even competing at Master Worlds or something, you don't really coach them off of something. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When do you determine to like expand a skill set? Because maybe your blue belt is killing it in competitions, but they might not be a purple belt yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of overall skill or what you want to see out of your purple belt.
Yeah. So that's a great point. You know, there's a couple things come into play. Just like you said, you could have a white belt that kills in competition. Maybe they wrestled in at a high level in high school or something like that, and they're able to take somebody down and hold them in side control for 4.5 minutes and win the match. Right? Mm-hmm. That's not exactly the skill set I'm looking for in a blue belt. So I'll encourage them like, hey, if you, I want you to start working on your guard pulls. I want you to be a guard puller. You can always go back to your takedown whenever you want. So I encourage them to expand their skill set that way. The transition from white belt to blue belt, I mean, they're still kind of beginner belts, so to speak. But I expect a couple different types of guard play. I expect a couple different types of sweeps. I expect them to understand submissions and start the foundation of the systems that we're teaching them. You know, I don't expect them to be experts in the systems, but they have to understand those systems, right? The transition from blue belt to purple belt. I mean, honestly, when you get to a purple belt level, you should be, in my opinion, my students should be able to not only explain but also teach the systems that we've been learning, right? So if we're going to be, working, spider lasso or De La Hiva or whatever it is that we're working, they should be knowledgeable enough to play pretty much any system that you put in front of them, right? Or be able to counter it as well. The biggest thing I tell my white belts, if you can do a couple things when early on in white belt, if you can control your breathing, if you can escape a pin, and if you can, what was the other one I keep telling? Control your breathing, escape a pin, and it'll come to me. But the very basics, because I've seen, and no offense to anybody, but I've seen purple belts who can't escape mount. Now they're dangerous. They're dangerous guard passers, and they can throw up arm bars. And I mean, they'll submit anybody from their back. But as long as they're not mounted, right? As long as they're not pinned, they're okay. That's not acceptable, right? If you're not, in my opinion, you're not even a blue belt. I'm sorry, you're not even a blue belt if you can't escape a simple pin, right? I mean, that's the basic foundations of jiu-jitsu that you got to know. You just have to know it. So. It's a lot about communication with your students and developing that trust. If if you're always pounding on that, that's not right, that's not right, you got to do this, you got to do that, they tend to not trust you as much as when you pull them aside and go, hey, your game is really good, okay? However, I need you to work on these things before you can continue to the next belt. Right. And as long as we have that understanding, then there shouldn't be any surprises when they don't get promoted, right? And everybody thinks they deserve their belt until they get it, and they're like, "Oh boy, I've got to work on this, I've got to work on that." Mm-hmm. But I try to communicate as much as possible. And I'm a new academy owner. Before that, I taught for my instructor Paul, and he had to make those tough decisions all the time. So that was I had the best of both worlds, right? Right. But you got to communicate with your students, in my opinion, and just let them know what your expectations are before that next promotion.
Yeah,
man, I really appreciate that because, I'll talk about my experience as a blue belt, and I think a lot of people go through this where you're starting to get up there, you're starting to get some seniority at your belt level, you're starting to feel like you're progressing, and you might even feel like I'm already at that level because you're catching maybe you're catching blue belts as a white belt, or you're catching purple belts as a blue belt, and you're just waiting for it. And for me, that was my case as a blue belt. I was like catching purple belts with triangles left and right, and I was growing frustrated at blue belt because I was like, man, what the hell is going on here? Why am I not getting promoted? And I look back now, my coaches never set me down and talked to me. They're like, you have to get away from, and I like the triangle a lot. You have to get away from that. You have to build the pieces around it. And that is your next step to purple belt, is being able to put all that stuff around it and use it as a foundational technique to get to other places that you want to be. And I think for me, I got really frustrated because I felt like my training, I wasn't training. I felt like I was training really well, but I didn't feel like I was getting there. And I feel like at the same time, that last little bit when I got to purple belt, as I look back on it now, was a maturity issue. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't quite set the maturity and the growth in the next level that I needed to be to represent that belt level. And so when I got my purple belt, I felt like technically I was a purple belt, but then like you were saying, I put that belt on and I was like, it felt a little heavy because I was like, man, I have a lot to do now. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm tapping purple belts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's over.
What you asked for.
Yeah. I've heard several friends of mine that are purple belts get their belt and they'll say, I'm going to work a little bit more on my fundamentals. I'm like, you've had 5 years to work on those fundamentals, and everybody should. I'm not saying they should, but that shouldn't be the first thought. You should be working on those all the time. And honestly, I got my black belt. I was super humbled to get it. I mean, it was an amazing experience. But now all I focus on is earning it every day. That's all I focus on. I study a lot. I train as much as I can. I train quite a bit, actually. But I want to set the example for my students. Like, hey, it's not about just showing up, man. It's showing up prepared, showing up ready to learn. Be proactive in your learning. There's the lowest level of learning is showing up. That's my opinion. Now, if you show up with the intent of learning, like, hey, I'm going to pick something up today. I don't know what it is, but my mind's going to be open. So many times I can look in the class and I can tell the people that have that mindset, that growth mindset, and I can also look in the class and look at and see the people who are just there to get through the technique so they can roll. I'm working on this. I can't wait to roll. And maybe they have their favorite training partner, and I always throw curveball lines. I'll switch them out, make them work with somebody else. But if you can make that switch as a student, and once I made that switch, man, my game got a lot simpler, and my growth just was enormous at that point. I mean, comparatively, right? Because I was like, oh, I'm gonna work on this for the next tournament. I'm gonna pull guard. I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna sweep them this way, and then I'm gonna get on top and I'm gonna do whatever. Well, I shook hands and the other guy pulled guard. Okay, now what? I wasn't prepared for that, right? a little bit, you got to approach things with a little bit more of an open mind. And man, you just have to be ready to proactively learn.
Yeah. And I think that comes with, well, I should say it comes with maturing into the deeper belts, because not everybody does that. There are people like you just mentioned that go to brown belt and beyond that don't ever take that approach, and they are just the one, they're just sitting, and there's a place for them too. I'm not criticizing people that aren't proactive and just crazy into jiu-jitsu. I mean, people do. Yeah. There are people that show up as higher belts that they're coming just to maybe socialize and get a couple rolls in and stuff. But I always say you're only going to advance as much as you put into it, as you guys know, right? I mean, I said this on the podcast last week. Is like I feel like my learning in the last year has just skyrocketed because I've been coaching. So I've been just watching so much jiu-jitsu. So now I encourage some of the students and stuff. I'm like, start watching more jiu-jitsu. I mean, seriously, you just start studying it. The more it's on your mind, and the more, if you have the time and the wherewithal, and that's what you want, man. And everybody I know that's jiu-jitsu geeks and coaches, they're all watching technique, because that's how we got to all learn, and we're learning. There's new stuff all the time, and we've said it before. A single academy, and this is another reason why you, as a student, you should go look at more video. Even as one of Alex's students, he's a great coach, but guess what? He can only coach so much stuff in 1 week. There's a lot to learn. So if you're limiting yourself just to your academies, and this is just my perspective, it's not Alex's, but I'm not an academy owner, but it's always good to go study other things,
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you know what you're studying and that it's legitimate, and always go back to your coach if you have questions. But if you're just going a couple, 2-3 times a week, and you're just learning you only have 3 to 5 hours a week to learn jiu-jitsu. And I've been there as a white belt. Your learning curve is much greater. I mean, it's going to be extended because, and I didn't, as a white belt, I never studied. I wasn't into it as much to study video. I was just trying to learn the basics,
Yeah.
But my point is at any level, if you can just learn more, because you're limited on the mat and what you can learn. That's just 100%. Because, and we use the example of, and this, you guys probably have a solid curriculum where you're going through cycles of different programs and guards, but even if you try to do all that, I'm a coach, I know I might not touch on close guard for another few months if I got to cover all this other stuff. So, or you know what I mean, in a long form, you're always working on different moves. But so study more. If you have a guard that maybe your coach doesn't like or doesn't play as much, and they're out there's certain coaches that only teach specific techniques. We know these people, and that's fine too. But maybe you gotta, if you're a tournament competitor, you gotta go and learn De La Riva if that's something that maybe your gym doesn't play as much. So, and you can do this on your own. So, I guess just what I'm saying is speaking from experience, and I know all three of us watch video and study technique. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what I've discovered as I got into my higher belts. I'm like, oh, I wasn't even putting the time mentally into learning the moves. I was relying on my professor to teach me everything. When I'm smart enough, I know the language enough, now I can go learn other aspects of the language. So
and your professor's job is mainly to introduce you to the system, and you fall in love with it and you run with it. That's really how it works, right? And you go out and study it, and you try to get better at it, and you just build off of what your professor taught, because you can study it for 6 months. He can't teach it for 6 months, or she can't teach it for 6 months, right? The class will lose interest because he's trying to please you. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's up to you to fall in love with it and run with it.
What is your opinion or your approach to these systems? Because I've heard some people who say, I like to be set for 3 to 4 weeks where we're moving throughout one system, and I've heard some people say, I like to be into a system for a week and then move on, so that students get more exposure to different things faster, and then when we cycle back through it, maybe cover something in the same vein but a little bit different. So there's a couple different approaches. Yeah,
so that's a great question. I'm a fan of both. I like going, I like going to classes where people teach something every week. That's cool. But the way I like to approach it in our school is I don't have an advanced class. I call it a mixed levels class. Okay, and each class builds on the last one. So I'll start a class. Let's just say we're doing an ankle lock, right? And I won't even go to the entry on the first day. I'll just say, hey, this is the grip, right? This is how you're gonna enter into this. And then the next day, I'll go, okay, now that we've entered, your leg goes here and your arm goes there. Okay, and then it just builds. Every day builds on the last, right? So when you get to week 4 of the month, now we're talking about counters and counters to counters and, and belly downs and doing all the craziness, right? But it builds from that first day, hey, this is a grip. So my white belt that's never done this before will not be saying, oh, his eyes won't be crossing because he's learning counters to counters by Friday the first week. That just doesn't work. So if I'm going to work on a system like a straight ankle lock, it's going to be from day 1, this is a grip, to, day 30, this is the counter to the counter to the counter, and this is the fit, right? So,
yeah, I really like that approach because you're essentially reverse engineering the stuff, right? I mean, it's the same thing with goals. You with any goal, you take the final end point. I want to do this as my main goal. Well, now I'm going to build the process and everything underneath it that needs to happen in order to get me there. So that same approach goes into jiu-jitsu too. So you're essentially taking the final goal, which is finishing the foot lock, building that piece, and then taking everything down. So you're learning, like you were saying, the counter to the counter. That reverse engineering, I think, is super powerful.
Yeah. It is just something that I learned from my instructor. He liked to break things down, and there were times when we got through a move in 2 weeks. We got through a little system in 2 weeks, but most of the time it's there was a month-long block that we worked on, and by the end of the month your ankles are sore, but you've got it down. I mean, you've got a really good understanding of that system.
I had I like that approach, and I've always had the question or the thought that it could be how do you manage? I guess the question is to you, because I like to teach topics like that too. So even if it's 2 weeks, we're covering the next. It's important that you're there the first day, because that's when I teach exactly what you're saying, the grips.
Yeah.
What do you do when they miss the first day? How do you manage that in a whole gym where you're managing a 1 month long program, and the first week Susie doesn't come to class? It's like. And also it's even more of a challenge if it's multiple classes, if you guys have everybody on the same program morning and nights, because I think that as a learner and a teacher, that's my favorite way.
Yeah,
like I love that if you can spend some time and really break things down, because that's what we're doing when we're studying video and teaching as well. I mean, to break down something you're going to teach, you have to kind of package it in those ways. And we all do that, even if you're just a blue belt on the mat teaching your friend how to do that choke you just did. You got to go through the different steps, right? So as you're if you're using a step process in instruction, do you run into problems with that, or do people just pick it up and or do you really? Because as a coach, when I do that, sometimes it's frustrating because I'm like, oh, if you were only here those very specific days, like you know what I mean? It would be nice if you can have everybody there on every single day of that program, but you have people missing days. Does that cause any issues with the learning that way?
Yes, and I've just learned to accept it. I've just learned to accept that some people are going to miss days, and my rule is I don't hold up the class. And I know that's kind of harsh, but what I do for the people that haven't been there. I mean, everybody has their reasons. It's not because everyone's lazy. Maybe they had something going on at work or whatever. But what I'll do is I'll teach that next. I'll kind of review what we did, teach the next section, and then when we do our breakouts, our individual breakouts, I'll go to that specific group, right, or that person, and just say, hey, when you weren't here, we did this and that, and I handle it that way. I don't want to hold up the rest of the class that has been there. I want them to continue, but I can take that little time while these guys are drilling to show that individual, show that person, hey, this is the grip we were working on, and your hip's going to turn this way, foot goes, whatever it is, right? And kind of catch them up as we go. And at the end of every class, I'll try to make time, if we have time, I'll say, hey, this is what we're doing the following day, whatever that is. This is what we're doing on Wednesday. So we did this today, and now we're going to go to this. So don't miss that class. And that kind of puts it in their head like, oh, gosh, I don't want to be the one that misses that, right? So you always drop that little nugget that gets them to think. Because what I want, and what's super effective, what's super effective about that is it gets them to put that next class in their calendar so they don't want to miss it. Yeah. And, they'll do what they can to get there.
Yeah. Well, perfect answer. I mean, you're already addressing it, but that's got to be frustrating. It's like, oh man, because as you're teaching that way, that's the way you'd love them to learn, but it just doesn't happen. But it's tough.
You can have a group of 15 people on Monday, and it'll be a different 15 by Friday. You know what I mean? So I get it.
It's so hard. Yeah, I totally get it, and it takes a lot on you to go back and recap. And I try to do a similar thing, but I do it at the beginning of class, and I'll just take a 10-minute period just to show what we did on the last class.
Yeah.
So people that weren't there, I'll just do a quick catch up. I'm not going to go through the whole technique, but this is what we covered for everyone as a review. Drill this a couple of times and move on, because I think by teaching multiple days like that and building up and building when you're teaching a system, that's so important. It's systematic teaching is what it is. Because if you're the type of coach that just teaches De La Hiva this week and close guard next week, and it could just be obviously you could just go for months on each of those topics, but if you don't, I like to show things as part of a system. So in terms of, you have this guard, this is a couple sweep options. If you don't get that option, this is another option to this side, or here's your submission, so that the students have options from those specific areas. And you can only do that as spending time on it, right?
Yeah.
Significant time.
Yeah, I think also what really helps is when your students sense how excited you are about teaching what you're teaching. Like when I study really, really hard and I break it down into what I'm going to teach per day, they see that enthusiasm. Like, man, I can't wait to show you this next part because we didn't have time today. Man, that's going to get them enthusiastic about learning it too, right? You're putting in the work. They can see that, right? The worst thing you can do is walk into a class and wing it. Everybody can smell it, man. Everybody knows you're winging it. And they may not. They may appreciate that because you have knowledge that they don't, but they know you're winging it. They know you didn't put the time in, so why should they?
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You're always leading from the front, my man. And one of the things I wanted to we can wrap it up with is, tell me about your Master Worlds experience. And really, you're unique in that, not unique, but I want to hear from the man himself that has to compete at Master Worlds and coach a team. And really, for one of your first times doing it, this is your baby now, Yeah. And I'm sure and here's probably where you have a lot of help from other friends and acquaintances within your association, but just walk us through a real quick, give the listeners a little feel of what's a Vegas trip for Alex like to Master Worlds.
Well, this year was kind of threefold because my wife did her first Master Worlds as well. So I was already nervous. It was already pegged, right? And then they went to another level. But no, the trip to Vegas was awesome. It really helps, and I'm going to plug the AZBJJL right now because the way they put on their tournaments, it's almost exactly like you would deal with at a Master Worlds level, any kind of level like that. They really do a good job because it's loud, it's chaotic, but it's ran very efficiently. And what I appreciate about the what we have locally that I hope others appreciate as well is that they spend a lot of time and money on the referees. And the referees are basically your lifeline. They are the ones that are going to make sure you don't get hurt. They're going to be in the right spot. They're going to do all the right things. And I appreciate that very much. I encourage my students to do these tournaments that we have locally versus others that may not have the same standard at refereeing and logistics, I guess you could call it, that most do. So they're very comparable. So Master Worlds, we got there on day one, and it was almost perfect because most of my students were going on the first day, or going on Thursday. So I spent all of Thursday running from mat to mat, and I had so much fun because I know how hard these guys worked, and it was just being able to be there, like right by the mat space. They had us in that little corral area, so to speak. But being able to coach them, my adrenaline dump was enormous. I slept like a baby that night. It was really cool. I went into competition day. Had no responsibilities that day, thank goodness. But I did have a lot of my teammates, black belt teammates, that were competing. So I wanted to watch them. So that it's a little bit of a distraction. But I had plenty of time to warm up, plenty of time to get myself ready. I tell my students, you're responsible for 3 things. Be on time, be on weight, and be warmed up. Right. So that's all I focused on that day. And won my first match. The guy was from Colorado. Can't remember his name, Eric, I think. And super tough. He had me in trouble the entire time. I got a takedown in the very beginning, and that was the highlight of my match because he had me in an omoplata, he had me in a crucifix, he had me in all kinds of really bad positions that I had to be very calm and work my way out of, and I ended up winning that match. So shout out to Eric. He did a great job. My second match, he was the number 1 guy in the bracket. 4th degree black belt, very, very tough guy. And, I had some film on him. So, I studied him, and very crafty. I mean, you don't get to be a 4th degree black belt by being, lazy or making mistakes, right? So, he played it right, man. We went 3-2. I think he had 3 with 2 advantages, and I had 2 points with 1 advantage. Lost by a point, but man, the preparation going into it. Coolest thing about this Master World is I got to train with my wife. We prepared together. We did private lessons together. We did competition classes together. That was the highlight, man.
That's amazing.
I can't think of a better scenario. I've always been either traveling alone or she comes with me, but she's just sitting in the stands. But this time we were like side by side, and she got to compete as well. So it was awesome, man.
How was Amy's experience?
It was great. So she got herself in amazing shape. She dropped 10% body fat and 30 pounds this year. Yeah, got herself in the weight class she wanted to get to. She trained so hard. I mean, mentally, physically, with her diet plan, everything was perfect. And she ran into the 4-time world champion in the first round, and and lost by ref's decision. So it was hey man, it was a hell of a match.
Yeah, totally. That's she's probably feeling like a killer after this year. What a year!
Yeah. She's
just to get out there and do that, and the whole court. Yeah,
totally different person, man. She's like just her confidence level, on and off the mats is insane. I'm so proud of her. She did a great job.
That's amazing. Did she go on Saturday then?
Yeah, she went Saturday. So we got to completely focus on her. I got to completely focus on me, and then I got to completely focus on the students. So it was a great trip, man. I mean, I was exhausted after though.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. No nightlife, no partying afterwards. You probably just had to get right back home and get to work, huh?
Yeah, we did a little. We got out a little.
There you go.
Got out a
That's
little bit.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, got out a little bit, but came right back and, right back on the mats on Monday morning, man.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, buddy, anything else you want to share today?
No, man. I'm a fan of you guys. You guys do a great job on this podcast. I hope I contributed as much as some of your other guests. I get a lot out of this, man. So please keep doing it, and I'll be watching.
Well, thanks for coming on, and
thank you very much.
We'd love to have you on again. To be honest,
yes, sir.
I think we could have went another hour.
Yeah, I think so.
We won't take any more of your time, and I'm sure I'll see you here soon, buddy. And everybody else, have a safe week of training, and we will see you for episode 50 coming up.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.